Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live session. This is an ADA Live with the Team Novo Nordisk Research team. My name is Zylan van Eyck. I'm the head of digital and creative at Team Novo Nordisk. And today I'm joined by the brains in our engine at the cycling team. I'm joined by the research team, and they're made up of scientists, medical professionals with a passion to develop and use evidence-based research to help people living with diabetes to push boundaries of what might be possible. During today's session, we're going to be joined by Charlotte Hayes. She's the head of diabetes, wellness, and education at the team. Sam Scott is the head of research, and Federico Fontana is the head of performance. They're going to share unique insights into what professional cyclists living with type 1 diabetes go through as they navigate the extreme demands of endurance sport. Very privileged to have you guys join us this afternoon and share some of the amazing things that you guys have harnessed over the last few years. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves shortly and just say a little bit about yourself. Charlotte, I'll have you start. I know you're currently at the race with the Devo team, very hands-on. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your role in Team Novo Nordisk, the world's first all-professional diabetes cycling team.
Yeah, so indeed, we're at footsteps of the Romans in Bulgaria, and our development team is participating in 2 days of racing here, and then we'll move on to another 5 days of racing in Sofia. So it's been a busy morning. Just to give you an idea of what I do, I've been checking in on glucose levels in terms of how the riders were doing overnight, what their morning glucose levels were. We have a strategy for fueling and insulin during the morning. And then I was working with some technology. We have the riders connect their CGM data to their bike computers, which happen to be Wahoo. And so I was helping some of the guys who had new Wahoo units get that setup done. So I do a lot of things with glucose management technology, overall, health for our riders. I will be checking in on glucose as soon as I'm off this call, and then I'll be in the race car.
Very, very interesting, especially to people who love endurance sports. So I'm excited personally about this afternoon session. Sam, you're the head of research at the team. Can you tell us what that means?
So I have a dual role. Half of my position is spent as a research fellow at the University of Bern in Switzerland, where I'm responsible for running a number of clinical studies, all with the main overarching aim of reducing barriers to exercise in people living with type 1 diabetes. So, for example, looking at strategies that reduce the drop in blood glucose, and then alongside that, looking to apply those findings to the Team Novo Nordisk athletes, and then looking to raise awareness of the research that we're doing through scientific publications, presentations, and that kind of thing.
And then Federico, you're the head of performance. I guess that probably means you work very closely with the riders to actually get them faster on the bike, pushing out more power.
Yeah, definitely. My role is mainly about understanding how to make them progress, overseeing training specifically. I work with a group of 3 other coaches, and we are responsible of, so from testing to monitoring to prescribing training on a daily basis. So we mainly kind of prescribe their lifestyle because everything kind of moves around the training prescription most of the time, for the majority of the time, because it is the priority, trying to fine tune it and balance it with everything around. And also I do kind of reach the diabetes management that Charlotte delivered to the riders into the training prescription or adjustment, making sure that diabetes management is aligned with the training prescription. So everything I do is behind training.
Thanks so much, Fede. If you guys are watching this on LinkedIn Live right now, please feel free to send some questions and we'll see if the guys can answer them a little later on. Before we get into the details, this forms part and coincides with the timing of the American Diabetes Association conference happening right now. Sam, you spoke a little bit about at the conference yesterday. Could you tell us what it is about exactly?
So ADA is a huge diabetes conference where thousands of people from all around the world attend every year. It focuses on all aspects of diabetes, whether it's the latest technologies, treatments. And the reason we were there was to highlight some of the work that we've been doing with Team Novo Nordisk. Yesterday night, I had a presentation which was just detailing what we've done to date with Team Novo Nordisk, what our ongoing process is with the athletes and what the future plans are there. So it was a really important kind of stage for us to be able to present that there.
And then Charlotte, you've been with the team for a long time now. I imagine when you started, do you sort of start first by analyzing, by looking to get a baseline of where the athletes are at before making changes and giving too much input? What did that look like at the beginning of the journey for you with the team?
So certainly I've learned to ask a lot of questions and to pay attention before I start advising. I think that's just a good general principle for a diabetes care and education specialist, or anytime we work with individuals with diabetes, is to understand kind of the baseline of where they are coming from. And so certainly it's been such a long time that I did that initially when I was meeting the athletes. 8 years later, we have seen an evolution of our individual athletes, certainly. But also the same goes with the team. You know, we're an evolving team as a sports team and a professional sports team. And so always looking at, processes, looking at data, looking at how diabetes and standards of care are evolving, and go through that kind of assessment every year, and then work on getting plans in place for individual rider glucose management and how we work with riders as a team.
Do you find it very rewarding yourself? Because you could work on any team in the world and you could help riders, achieve their potential and their ability. But working in this sector, surely it has to be more rewarding. Am I right?
I would say so. I've worked in diabetes care for so long. I'm just really inspired by working with diabetes. And of course, I love working in sports, and cycling is an endurance sport. I will say in the past 7.5 years, I've learned a whole lot about the sport of cycling because I'm working with coaches and athletes and soigneurs and mechanics. So I learned from everybody on the team. It's just been an evolution of, and we look for continuous improvement.
And then Fede, going to your department, can you talk a little bit about the things that you've learned in terms of adapting to how the riders' bodies are responding to workouts that you're giving them? Again, you could work for any team, but this surely must be more interesting because of how much you are interested in sports performance.
Yeah, it's for sure a fine-tuning game. So at this stage, the bases are set, especially in the professional squad. So you are working daily to understand how to adjust their routine. Everything is built around a precise routine that they try to follow. So it's a matter of exploring what is the current state of the art at the moment, including new evidence bases, for example, talking with the riders a lot about their own perception, their own feeling, interrogating the network of people around each athlete and understand what we can explore better and define better the plan for action, but also including the data. We do collect a lot of data behind training, behind glucose management, behind individual feeling and perception to develop this roadmap that do follow the season around the training, the racing calendar, to make sure that everyone do achieve their own individual goal and the team's goal as well. And most of the learnings are actually around the daily adjustment of training prescription, for example, based on overnight glucose control or based on daily insulin adjustment, and also depending on their capability and capacity to perform at a given day. And this precision in adjusting and also the capacity to precisely timing the adjustment is key in balancing recovery and training stimuli, without forgetting the seasonality and the long-term periodization that is always on the table. So it's clear where we have to go and where we are now. So we do follow a map, but then the daily adjustment is very, very important.
You talk about what happens overnight with the athlete. How often do you have access to the athlete's data?
So we have a system in place where the coaches do work very close with Charlotte, that is overseeing the whole diabetes management, and with the doctors that perhaps are at the races where they can act locally with the riders. So we do integrate a data supervision together with Charlotte. So the coaches have the knowledge and the capacity to oversee daily glucose data from the riders, and then interacting with both the riders and with Charlotte. She is capable of giving direction, for example, or adjusting and fine-tuning a prescription or a new kind of support to implement, to optimize the current glucose management, depending on several factors like travel, like the food intake, the training prescription, the racing demand, the stress around their own life. So all of these factors need to be included into this knowledge base to then deliver or adjust the plan that we follow. And the coaches, since we do have a daily interaction with the rider on a daily basis by phone, by WhatsApp, by email, by video calls. So we are the center of this network to get feedbacks from them, to interrogate the data, and to have direction from the expert, from Charlotte.
And you guys often say that diabetes management is a very individualized process. What are some of those factors for the individual fit? Is it those parameters that I guess you've just mentioned now, like travel, like what the athlete's goals are? Would you say those are some of the examples?
Yeah, from a training perspective and performance perspective, yes. Then I would love to hear Charlotte on the diabetes kind of side. But yeah, traveling, kind of individual stress level on races, for example, particular training sessions, lifestyle as well is a huge factor. Their agenda, their daily agenda, is playing a role. Seasonality as well, environment like temperature, altitude, time zones changes, all of these have an influence on glucose control.
And then Sam, I have a question for you. What were some of your preconceived ideas coming into this role, and then post having worked with the team for a long time, what were some of the biggest surprises that you found?
I don't know if I really had preconceived ideas. I think it was really one of the things that motivated me to get in touch with Team Novo Nordisk was after working so closely with people in the clinical setting, conducting research projects, looking for ways to get people into doing kind of average levels of exercise. And then when you see the Team Novo Nordisk athletes cycling day after day, 5 hours a day against some of the best athletes in the world, this was something that I was really motivated to then get involved in, to learn how they were managing to do this, and also strive to get on the podium all the time. One of the biggest challenges, I guess, has been managing the speed at which professional sports or cycling goes compared to research world. The research world is much slower in terms of making sure procedures are put in place, ethics, study design, being awarded funding, that kind of thing. It takes a long time from the start of a project to having the end results. Whereas on the other hand, with professional road cycling, it can't wait that long. So you've got to very quickly work out ways in which you can benefit the team on a much faster level.
Would you say that CGM technology, continuous glucose technology, has played a big role, especially with the professional athletes, in your learnings then, in understanding what exactly was happening? Because now you have access almost in real time to that data.
The CGM is, without it, I'm not really sure what we would do. It allows us to completely non-invasively have excellent insight into what is happening with the rider's glycemia 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, especially when they're traveling all over the world. We currently have a number of projects in which we're looking to better understand patterns of how the CGM data changes depending on what the athletes are doing, whether it's race days versus just normal training days in their own home, travel days, rest days. And then as well, we can start and go into that data further, looking at patterns of what kind of race were they doing? Was it done at altitude, at a specific type of temperature? Was the athlete experiencing some level of overtraining or something like that? And also, can we identify areas in which the riders might be struggling more with post-exercise hypoglycemia, and is there a way that we can look to help that? And with CGM, we're able to do that with pretty much no invasion to what the riders are doing, which is concentrating on winning races.
I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but I'd love to know your thoughts on the CGM technology for just endurance athletes living without diabetes. We see that becoming more prevalent in sport now. And this is obviously something that the diabetes community has pioneered, which is amazing. Do you think it's beneficial for people living without diabetes in endurance sports? Who wants to take this one?
I can reply first. I think it has potential for sure. We are understanding what's the current relevance of glucose dynamics in the context of performance and health of people living without diabetes. But for sure, the amount of variability that people have in terms of glucose management is of interest. So if it play a role in optimizing the training environment, that a very promising metric to look at, in my opinion.
Very interesting. And then we've got a question. Please send your questions through here and we'll see if the team can answer them for you. We've got one from Alan Chu Kang, who's asking, and Charlotte, maybe you are best suited as you are at the race to answer this. Do the personnel have access to blood glucose data during the race?
So during the race, we do not directly see the glucose data. The riders do see the data on their own head units. That said, there is a lot of communication going on in races. Often the riders have race radios and they can communicate with us in the car. If there's not a race radio, they can always come back to the car and talk to me about their glucose management. But as technology stands today, the data is not streaming back to the car. However, we do certainly do a lot of monitoring before the riders start racing. Rules are that they cannot have a cell phone or a mobile phone in their pockets. So that's not a way of communication. That's not a way that data can stream back to us into a CGM data management platform that I could view. But we're certainly looking at all of that data and verifying every number with also fingerstick blood glucose data before a race, after races, and then sometimes during a race we'll still do fingerstick tests from the car.
What are some of the other things you guys do at the races to control the environment? Because obviously you can't control everything, but I'm sure there are measures you take to make the environment as safe as possible. Can you give us some of those examples that you do at the races to control the environment for the athletes?
Well, sure, I'll do that. In a sporting event, a lot of things are not completely under control. And if any of you have attended a cycling race, you'll know that there are just a lot of variables that are beyond our control as human beings. Those things being, the climate, the altitude. Other variables are just the race itself in terms of the dynamics of the race, the other teams racing, the strategy of the race. There may be a big effort in a breakaway early in a race, which drives speed up. Then there may be periods where a team is controlling the race and there's a big pack of riders who are just riding along pretty efficiently. So all of those things affect glucose, and we can't really control that. The things that we can control and really align our nutrition strategy, insulin strategy, glucose monitoring strategy, understanding those patterns that Sam was talking about in terms of how does a rider's glucose generally look at the beginning of the race? Are they really stressful? And so we see a glucose rise pre-race or in anticipation of that race or early in the race when there's a lot of anxiety still about how is this race going to play out. Those are things that we can talk with the riders about thinking and trying to reduce their emotional stress at those times. I'm not sure that that's always a good thing because you do want an athlete to be, a little bit excited before a race. And then we see, high glucose patterns at the end of a race when it's very hot and there's a lot of effort. Generally, people think there will be a low glucose, but we tend to see high patterns. And so if we know that we're going to see those, we can think about strategies for resolving those glucose highs toward the end of a race. So a lot of things are variable. They're not really under our control. We do control the things we can, those being glucose management, insulin strategy, nutrition, hydration, and then the rest of it, we just have to really be thinking, feet on the ground and quick thinking about resolution and how to control what we can.
Just to briefly touch on the CGM topic again, we do have a question through from Alan Cho Kang, who said the UCI recently banned glucose monitors in principle. Is Team Novo Nordisk exempt from this? Yes, we are exempt from this because pretty much, I'd imagine without that technology, the athletes wouldn't be able to do as well as they are doing today, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, for us, it's a glucose management. It's a safety issue. So definitely, we firmly believe that anyone with diabetes needs that access to CGM.
What are some of the benefits from exercise for people living with diabetes? I'm not sure, Sam, if you would like to answer this maybe.
Well, on a very broad scale, I mean, there's lots of evidence showing that there's very similar benefits to everybody else in terms of improving weight management, reducing risk of things like depression, anxiety, helping with reducing risk of cardiovascular disease. A lot of people with type 1 diabetes say that they find easier to manage glycemia when they do exercise regularly. Yeah, the benefits are huge.
And then using exercise, if we were to talk about type 2 diabetes, using exercise, using healthy lifestyle as a preventative measure, I know that is something that has become important to us this year, and we've touched on it a bit. Are there major benefits using exercise, and what other things can people do as a preventative measure for type 2 diabetes?
I can answer this again. I mean, type 2 diabetes is something which is very multifactorial, and it can happen for lots of different reasons. I mean, increasing your exercise is an important step to reducing your risk of type 2 diabetes. It's important to try and be as active as possible to reduce things like weight gain and increase muscle mass. This will all have a very positive impact on reducing the risks of that.
And then, I mean, we get a lot of questions about diabetes management from our community. And often, you know, our professionals could sort of be seen as, I don't know, superhuman or something, but ultimately they are just human beings who have this challenge of managing this condition that they have every single day. How hard is it for them to manage? Is it still trial and error? Do they make mistakes? I mean, I guess I want to make them more relatable to our community, to show that, you know, if they can do it, anyone can do it too. Like, how difficult is it for them to manage this?
Well, I can answer that because I do spend a lot of time with the athletes. For example, being embedded with the development team right now, and then communicating with our professional team. You know, diabetes management is 24/7, and anyone living with diabetes recognizes that. Our riders really are very dedicated to managing glucose to the best of their ability. They've learned to pay attention to their CGM and glucose data for making wise management decisions. That said, you know, racing and everything that's involved with being a professional athlete, and we've touched on this, travel days are very different from race days, and those are different from training days when you're at home. And so it takes a lot of rigor to really pay attention to achieving those best possible glucose levels for whatever you're doing. So to accomplish what our riders do as athletes, they're certainly not superhuman. Certainly there are times when glucose is out of range due to, you know, thinking that they're making the best possible decision, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. And so they face the same challenges, I would say, that anyone else with diabetes face, in that they're doing the best that they can, engaging in their diabetes management in terms of nutrition, taking insulin, watching their data, looking at their training very rigorously. But even so, sometimes glucose numbers are out of range, and then we work to find out those patterns, figure out if there are solutions, and sometimes it just happens and that's it. I like to focus on, what's going right, not just that one time when glucose was out of range for whatever reason that we may not even be able to exactly say what it was.
Charlotte, what are the differences you find between the pro team, the Devo team, and working with the Talent ID group? Because typically there's but there can be an age difference there. Do you find
Sure.
differences in working at the different levels?
Well, certainly. I mean, our professional writers have been, most of them have, or many of them now, I would say, have come through our Talent ID programs as just young adolescents, 15 to 18 years old, at a Talent ID program. They have maybe been racing some. They've been athletes, but they've been on their own for the most part. They may not even have known someone else with diabetes. So they get a strong foundation, and we get to work very closely one-on-one with them when they're in the Talent ID camps. And some of our athletes come back to Talent ID for three years. Some never move up through our athlete development pipeline, but they still have had that Talent ID experience. They now have a network of people like them who enjoy sports and have type 1 diabetes. They stay connected. But once those riders from Talent ID are selected for the development program, they really are in a period of immersion in developing racing skills, developing training, developing understanding of nutrition, sports nutrition as it relates to cycling. How do we marry, glucose and diabetes management with all of those things that they're doing in terms of training and nutrition and monitoring and managing the stresses of racing, for example. So, that's a skill development period for them as athletes and as diabetes self-managers, because many of them are just moving out of their homes, away from mom and dad, for example. During their years on the development team, they evolve, they progress, and those who are ready move up to the pro team. So we hope that by the time the riders are racing at that level, they've got a really solid foundation that they're continuing to build on.
I must say that is one of the things I love about working for this team. I've worked for several teams before this and worked with several athletes. But just that, the ability to make an impact, a real impact on a community. I remember talking to you recently, Charlotte, about the Talent ID, and the Talent ID camp is coming up in July now. And most of the athletes there won't make it onto the Devo team necessarily, but they will have learned things that they can take with them into the rest of their lives. In terms of diabetes management. And some of the guys actually come back the following year again to learn new things, because there's so much new learning going on every single year and new things getting discovered. So that is one of the things I love about this team that makes a real impact on the community. Yeah. Fede, I wanted to ask you, do you speak to your peers? Do you speak to other coaches? And are they very interested in what you do and the environment that you're working in? And I mean, they should be jealous of you. Are they jealous of you?
Well, yes, we do share ideas. We do compare our approach to training, for example, to testing, that's for sure. So the majority of testing that we do implement are based on scientific development on people without diabetes simply because they are more available. And from a physiological perspective, we know that we can apply those testing procedures. But there is always a good network of coaches and friends, mainly, or people I've worked with in the past, where we can simply pick up the phone and share an idea, share a concept, or validate what was in our head. Sometimes you do move by intuition, because perhaps you want to scratch something new, you want to push the limit as others didn't. So sometimes it's also about, yeah, let's validate my thinking and trying to understand if that makes sense or not. So there is a lot of curiosity behind how we do stuff, because the integration of glucose data is posing an extra layer of complexity, but it's also fascinating because we can include this extra variable into the understanding of the relationship between training prescription and performance outcome. For example, how much of that was related to glucose management. And this is what it's available now with new emerging technologies in the context of CGM dynamics outside of the diabetes monitoring, and this extra variable as glucose in the context of TNN is very, very integrated into performance understanding and training prescription. So other sports scientists and coaches are, I can say, yes, there is interest. Also to see if we can try to bridge their knowledge and our knowledge in this kind of collective intelligence effort to push forward the boundary of what is possible on a bike first, and then with living with diabetes.
Sam, I have a similar question to you because you are connected to the academic world. Your peers, do they bombard you with questions? They must be fascinated with some of your findings.
I don't know. Yeah. I think previously, maybe a lot of people that because I came from more of a sports science world, which wasn't directly connected with type 1 diabetes, and more people are starting to understand the complexities of what is going on when you compete in professional road cycling while living with type 1 diabetes, and more people are wanting to learn about that from a purely scientific point of view. It's very interesting, the idea of what happens to glycemia when you don't produce insulin, and yeah, people are wanting to know and understand from a kind of fundamental level how that is translatable to everyone who's not living with diabetes as well. I'd say as well, we've been pushing a lot more to get into the more kind of mainstream sports science world in terms of presenting at conferences like ECSS and ACSM, which is again raising the awareness outside. And then as that progresses, more and more people are asking questions because they're increasingly gaining awareness and finding it interesting.
As a support team to the athletes, here's a question for you. Do you sometimes have to play a supporting role in mentally helping the athletes overcome certain challenges? The reason I asked this is because I was chatting to one of our ambassadors the other day, and he's an Ironman triathlete, and every single Ironman he's done has been challenging for him. And he's done many, but he still has a fear. Let's say, for instance, in the swim, which is understandable because the swim in a triathlon is the most life-threatening environment, but so much so that he will swim with a gel underneath his swim cap or gel inside his wetsuit, just in case something happens. But it's never happened to him. But that's just something that he has had to overcome mentally, that he has to deal with mentally. Do you guys find in dealing with athletes sometimes in maybe heated environments, you have to play that supporting role where you have to sit the guys down and sort of nurture them in a way mentally?
Yeah, I can start from there. Yeah, as coaches, we do spend quite a lot of time talking, just connected to the human being, because we do have this role of releasing pressure out of them when possible, clarifying that we did work, we did everything as planned, so they are ready to perform. And also, it's about developing a consistent routine and being able to cope with or to buffer unpredictable things that might happen. So they are prepared to face these situations. But for sure, as humans, there is always this kind of layer of fear or facing what's not predictable, what wasn't on the plan, on the schedule, that is kicking in and rising their stress level that we know will have an impact, for example, on glucose management. So for them, will be even more important to manage stress, personal stress, or fears perception, or even what's dangerous, what's not, what's safe. But as I said, most of it has to deal with having a plan, a reaction plan, and they are also used to it. They've been racing things a lot and in very different environments, so they have the skill set and also the experience to face these challenges. But then in the moment before the race, it's always good to have a chat and to sit down, to relax a bit, to distract them as well, even though it's a very focused moment, but at least to avoid what is not necessary to focus on at the moment and develop this positive thinking attitude that they will be ready to face whatever will happen.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you so much, guys. And yeah, thank you for you to giving us a window into your world. It's very fascinating what you do on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, in wrapping up, is there anything else you'd like to share? You guys happy with what we've covered here today? Any words of encouragement any of you would like to share? Now's your opportunity before we press the close button. We're all good. All good. Cool. We do have, if you're watching this, we do have a research page. We do have an education page on the TNN website. So make sure to keep an eye on teamnovonordisk.com. These guys very generously give up their time, give up their insights, and we try to regularly share information and new learnings with you. And then with regards to nutrition as well, we've launched the Team Novo Nordisk cookbook this year with delicious recipes, easy to make delicious recipes. That's also on teamnovonordisk.com underneath the education page. So yeah, keep a lookout there. Charlotte, you guys are racing in Bulgaria this afternoon in just an hour or two with the Devo team. Good luck out there.
Thanks
Tell
so
the
much.
boys we say. Yeah, hope you guys represent well. I know the boys are ready to go and they've been loving racing. So good luck this afternoon.
We're ready.
Thank you to you. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for being part of our community as always. Until next time, we'll see you soon.
And thank you for the great hosting. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.